Kelly told us to go ahead and get started. So we're going to resume back on the PowerPoint. We don't have any more video to show. But we're going to go back to that last shot that we saw in the video where we saw some sandal footprints on stone. And this is in the Rephidim area.
This is probably one of the most amazing things other than the split rock to me to be found located in these areas. Because as you saw on the end of that roll-in, the Bible very plainly talks about a promise that was first given to Abraham and passed all the way down. And Moses is also given this promise by God, and he tells it in turn to the children of Israel. And he says, the Lord has said that wherever you place the soles of your feet, God will give you the land. And it's very, very amazing that strewn all over an area in high concentrations around this split rock, we have a bunch of not feet, but sandals. If you notice, these are not, you don't see the toes. You see sandals, and they're very apparently sandals because they've gone even so far as in most of the drawings to show that the latchets are on the side of the sandals. I found that extremely interesting in light of that promise, and extremely interesting that they are in what is now Saudi Arabia, and God said, wherever you place the soles of your feet, I'll give you the land. But maybe we shouldn't go there. At any rate, one of the things, we thought this for quite some time. We thought, well, I wonder, could that be? Yeah, I mean, if somebody told me, hey, wherever you draw out your feet, I'll come back and give you the deed to all of that property. I can guarantee you I would be walking around drawing my feet all over everything I could put them on. But there's something we did not notice about these little footprints. We call them the footprints, or the sandaled feet prints. They're all over in this area in Arabia. And in searching these out, we had a guy come to us by the name of Dr. Miles Jones. This was in about the year 2002. And he said, this Miles is, I guess he's going to be to the right there.
Yeah, he's to the right.
Miles is a PhD in languages. He's a specialist in ancient languages, in fact. And he said to us, wait, back that up. We're showing him the pictures of these feet. And he says, back up. There's an alphabetic character on those feet. And I mean, Jim and I never saw it. We had no earthly concept. We had seen those three little lines, but we did not notice that they were on every pair of sandaled feet in one way or another that we ever had a picture of. And sure enough, Dr. Jones pointed this out to us that, you see those three little hash marks? I just know that that's one of the ancient letters of a particular writing they call Thamudic. Thamudic, there are a wide range of scholars. Some scholars in Thamudic say it's 1,500 years old, this rock carving. Some say it's 4,500 years old. They're both called scholars. This I can't figure out, but it's the truth. And what Miles said is, I think those three hash marks are a Thamudic character, and the way that they were drawn on the side of the foot where there's the indentation, he called it a ligature. Now, I am not an expert, and I had no earthly idea what a ligature was, but Miles Jones, the expert, said that is a ligature, and that is a Thamudic character, I guarantee it. To make a long story short, we went pouring through the Thamudic tables, of which there are thousands, because each one of these various experts in Thamudic has their own table, and the evaluation of where they think each of these letters found their way to our current day alphabet. That little three hash mark with that little cup underneath it, which is what Miles said was found on that foot, actually wound its way on one of these Thamudic tables into the Hebrew letter kaf, or kaf. And that word has two meanings. First, it's like the cup of the palm of the hand, like this. But the other meaning that is in my Greek Hebrew lexicon means the sole of the foot. Why would somebody not only draw their sandaled foot, but why would they, in effect, write in graffiti, the sole of my foot? If that's not compelling enough evidence to add to this other volume of possibility that, in fact, the wandering of the Hebrew children took place at least through this area, I don't know what is. There you can see it again, the three little hash marks. And like I said, once again, this was pointed out to us by an expert. We had never even noticed it other than, there's three scratches there, but look at the feet. Well, something even more important is that little Thamudic character right there. that in all possibility means someone just about etched, the sole of my foot was here.
Dr. Miles was in search of what we call the Rosetta Stone. He was trying to find a connection to Mount Sinai and this ancient Talmudic text that he was looking for. And I'm telling you, the excitement in the room when we found this and he pointed that out, he went ballistic. He said, oh, this is it. And this falls into his work. And I'm just going to use a few slides of what his approach to this idea is. And I found it extremely, as you say, compelling. But he said that what he believes is that the writing, this Talmudic writing, this most ancient text, 1500 or so BC era, was a language that was the writing of God. And then he goes into, this is some of his PhD work, but I'm going to just briefly, we'll go quickly through it. He said the alphabet was the most important innovation in human history. We always call it phonetics, based on the Phoenicians. He says it wasn't the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians got it from the Hebrews. Think about teaching phonics in school and what it does and what it can do for your children. There's only been one alphabet, and I'm just going to skim right over the top of these, but he said that pictographic writing that the Egyptians were used to using, cuneiform and some of these other types, were an abomination to God, and a new language was given along with the Ten Commandments, and he believes that the Ten Commandments were written in this Talmudic text.
One of the things that he did when he put it before other scholars, you'll find in the next slide, they got some translations. According to Miles, he got 3. This little, where it looks like the little snake and squiggly line there, is actually an inscription, and you can see in the center there are those 3 hash marks. So, because there was some debate as to whether this was something called wasm, which are Arabian tribal Bedouin markings. And when this was also found used in other writing in the middle of what would be a word or a sentence in Talmudic writing on others of the rocks, it was proven out that this was not in fact wasm, but this was in fact a Talmudic character.
Imagine where we find these stones. We find them laying all over the desert. These stones have the Talmudic text on it. Remember we talked about their tents being a round tent. Out of the outer edges you would have the stones laying there, and then there would be a threshold or 2 stones. And on those 2 stones you would write the scripture on each of the doorposts according to this scripture here in Deuteronomy. So you can see what we were coming across was these stones are laying all over the place.
One of the most amazing ones that came back in translation was this one. Died Amalek. Now what's that doing in a
This gentleman we met last
line of the
December.
Exodus?
We flew to Korea, and this gentleman worked in Saudi Arabia for 20 years. It's Dr. Kim. He was in the same area we were, but not able to get to the mountain or climb the mountain, but he worked the areas around it. We didn't know him until last December, and he was introduced to us through Bob Carnute. And we flew over together to see what type of thing this man had. But one of the things that impressed me the most was this is tying the Talmudic text that Dr. Miles is talking about to the Exodus, and specifically to the menorah. And we can see this will become the oldest menorah, you will be the first people to see it, that's ever been found. I know it's just on rock and it's just a petroglyph, but the oldest one to date that they know of is around 200 BC.
And this is in keeping with the Talmudic text, and as you can see, right there in the center of it.
Yep.
It wasn't scratched along later as
Same
some
era,
of the other
same
things
time.
were.
So what we saw back in our original Bible map, we talked about the question marks and all of the things that are in question. When we move over into the land of Midian, where it should be, we come up with a crossing site. And all of the stopping stations, Mara, Elam, Alush, Dabka, Rephidim, all of these sites become sites that we can identify and place with a surety what that place is. And this compare this to the other map, and we'll see quite a different story. One more thing we're going to talk about. Where's the land of the wandering? And I'm going to go through this very quickly. so watch or you'll miss it. When they came across this new crossing site, we're talking about the Gulf of Aqaba, not the Sea of Reeds, Sea of Weeds, or whatever they thought it was. We're talking about the Gulf of Aqaba. And this whole picture at the Gulf of Aqaba is amazing. But when they get to Mount Sinai, they could go 1, 2, or 3 ways. They could go to the east, because there's no water blocking them. Traditional site, you have to go north. They could go south. Wasn't anything blocking them. Wasn't water blocking them. Traditional site, you had to go north. Or you could have gone north. And in fact, they did. And they went up to Hazeroth. But what happened is, at Hazeroth, they were turned around. Remember they sent the spies out, and spies came back with a bad report? And then I'm going to switch quickly to Dr. Miles Jones's study of the migration of the language. And here's what he's saying. And watch how this compares. He says that the language traveled to Yemen first.
And the reason that we know this is because
Sinai.
he's tracing the writing on the rocks from the potential candidate of Jebel al-Lawz in the land of Midian in Saudi Arabia. The writing on the rocks becomes more and more prolific and more refined.
He lived in
Yemen. And it goes down to Yemen.
He lived in Yemen for 2 years in the late 1990s. And before he was ever given this idea, his calling to look for this Thamudic language and try to decipher what it is. And he said, in this, after the finding the Rosetta Stone, if you want to call it that the language went to Midian first. And this is what we have believed all along, that the route of the wandering in the wilderness, after God said, now turn and go into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea, that they turned and went by the way of the Red Sea. Where'd they go? They went into southern Arabia, into an area we call the Ruba Kali. The Ruba Kali is the most barren desert on the planet. It is a place where no man crosses. It fits the biblical description of the great and terrible wilderness.
By the way, you'll find that in the first 2 chapters of Jeremiah, the Lord talks about, why did your fathers followed me in the wilderness? Why have they turned away from me now? And he's going into this dissertation about the turning away of at that time from Israel to idolatry. But he specifically says, I led them through a land that was neither tilled nor sown. Sinai Peninsula was absolutely in areas tilled and sown. There's great records. There were huge copper mines in the area, and Pharaoh's men were stationed all over the Sinai Peninsula. The other thing that Jeremiah says that the Lord is speaking through him, in the great and terrible wilderness, he said the other thing was, the land I led you through was not tilled, it was not sown. No man went there, neither did any man live there. Which kind of knocks the Sinai Peninsula right out of the picture if we're only using Scripture.
Exactly. And again, back to Miles's theory, we're just talking parallels here with what Miles has done with language and what we believe through not necessarily archaeology, but the archaeological remains that we have found all the way down into Yemen. And so he says that the South Arabian script was the place that it developed first. Then they turn around and they go back into the land of Canaan, going north, passing right by the split rock on their way back into this promised land. So you can see where her connection, we believe it's the same rock. They would have come right back to it. Traditional site, you'd have been going in circles, in small circles. The end of the line would have seen the beginning of the line. It's an area that's way too small for millions of people to wander in for 40 years. And the other thing is that all the way down into this land, we find that footprints follow these steps on down into Yemen.
And that's not the only thing, but I'll get to that in just a second. There's a very unique scripture here that really jumped out in our minds after we saw all these feet in the desert, all these sandaled footprints all over Arabia. It says, the sons of them in Isaiah 60 that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee, and all they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet. I very much wonder sometimes whether that is not just a beautiful, prosaic statement, because as we all know, the Lord is very capable of the most beautiful words that have ever been uttered. But sometimes I wonder whether that has also a literal meaning. Could it possibly be I can't tell you whether that's true or not, but if that is the case, coupled with archaeological finds that are being made and have been made that I'm really not yet at liberty to talk about, what I can tell you is that there are, where we are not archaeologists, we are not Egyptologists. At best, we are reporters who have seen and taken pictures of things on the ground. I would never profess to be an expert about this, but one thing that I do know is that about this time next year, there should be a film that is completed that will be called The Exodus Case. And a huge team of archaeologists, Egyptologists, anthropologists, political leaders, the people who have the credentials that we have given this, among other people, have given their findings to this great body of experts. About this time next year, we hope to see a release of a film that's going to give the opinions of all of these people who really do know what they're looking at and can give absolute opinions as to what they think about these things. And it will be startling, I can assure you, what the experts have found.
Startling because we believe that when they see all the evidence in the trail that the language has left, that the real promised land in the land of Israel will be what you see right here. And that's the slide I wanted to shock you with. I didn't get a reaction. But I'm not the only one. In Dake's Bible, it was interesting. We were just fumbling around looking for things. One of the things that Dake's, if you're familiar with his Bible, and the tremendous amount of work that he did in there, he says that all of the Arabian Peninsula will become part of the Promised Land as well. So just one more glance, okay, and that's it. So thank y'all very much.
Go back to this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go back to that other.
You get the lights up, Matt? If you want to ask questions, there's microphones, and we'll do questions for about 20 minutes or so, because we can stay here tomorrow and do it, I'm sure. But if you want to ask questions, you can line up at the microphones, and they will address your questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Why won't Saudi Arabia allow people like yourselves to go in there? And what was your cover to be able to get into there?
Well, one of the things about this particular topic, Mount Sinai, you know how in the news every day you can hear just how politically hot is the Arab-Israeli conflict. I mean, it's been going on all of my lifetime, it seems like, and it is very, very particularly heated at this moment. The Saudi Arabian rulers have in their country what are the two holiest shrines of the religion of Islam. And it would almost be suicide for them to admit or to allow any kind of excavation that would say or come to the conclusion of, even a potential conclusion of, that one of the holiest sites in all of Judaism would be smack in the middle of their land. Now, right on the other hand, to answer your second question, how did we do it? I'll tell you the truth, I don't know, other than we were covered.
But I also worked in the country. I had what's called a residential passport in Igama. And with that Igama, it gave you a certain ability to go to certain areas, not in archaeological areas for sure, and definitely not in this area. But I always obtained from the Eastern Province, in other words, like from here to California, away from this site, I had a travel letter that had the names of the laws. And thank God I did, because the people in the Eastern Province didn't know what the people in the Western Province were doing, so they wrote it on there in Arabic. So when we would get arrested, and we did 3 really bad times and a number of other times just run off out of the area, I would show this letter. And And normally, that would get us, and we were also a family, because my two smallest, we were not a threat, and that would kind of give us the ability to move on and kind of get a pass. But remind you that no time did they ever give us permission to be in these sites. No time did that ever happen.
Thank you. You've been really blessed.
Thank you.
G'day guys, thanks for that, that was brilliant, really enjoyed that. I wanted to know how, with the area, the fenced off area with the guardhouse, you said that you were able to get into that area a couple of times. How were you able to get into there, and what was the danger like when you were in those areas?
Well, actually, the very first time we ever went into the area, it was nearing dusk, and there was a Bedouin boy and his father, who for some reason, it was very, very cold, and for some reason, because of the lack of communication, they thought perhaps we were looking for a place to camp at night. And the dad left, which should have given us a clue that we were in trouble. But the boy unlocked the gate and let us walk right in. Now, I can't explain that either.
What it is with young boys, there's 8, 9-year-old kids, and this has happened with several other people in the area that they were escorted in to places they weren't supposed to be by.
He did not allow us to take inside any cameras.
No.
We were in there for about 15 minutes or so, and we could hear, as you can in the desert, when there's a vehicle coming, huge clouds of dust come up, and you can hear it coming for miles. And we should have known when the dad left that we were in trouble when he came back. And sure enough, he brought the Frontier Forces policemen, which are the desert police. They live out there on the frontier all the time. And unbeknownst to us at the time, the desert Frontier Forces had instructed the Bedouin, do not let anybody into this site. When they came back and found that the sun had let us in and a huge, enormous fight erupted, they were attacking the man and his son. They were attacking us. I mean, they roared up, and quite literally, they roared up, and it was like a nightmare out of an old Western movie, because they literally had, all the stars, like they were all generals, on their uniforms, which they weren't. And they also had these shells, shotgun shells, or rather rifles. Rifle shells strapped completely across their chests, and they were waving AK-47s at us. Now, we were never harmed. Never harmed. But we were interrogated for long, long hours, and then finally they didn't know what to do with us, because we actually lived in the country, and they just would send us out of there and back to the eastern province, which, like he said, is driving from here to California. We lived on the opposite side of the country. But when Jim was able to get the film, we found that we could get in there without actually breaking the law, because the fence runs around the whole front perimeter of the mountain. So like good obedient children, we climbed up the back side of the mountain and came over the front side.
Exactly.
And that's how he got in without actually breaking into the fence. So, but he got in there a few times like that, just really miraculously, honestly, because there were many times when our trips did not go well, and we got sent out of there before we ever got a picture. So,
yeah, there was something about this site where after we met this Korean that had this incredible image of the menorah, he said, "Jim, the mountain was calling me. It was in my face." And this started with him in 2000, the year we left. He picked up the mantle, I believe. And I looked at him, Dr. Kim, because we immediately had a relationship, because we knew the same struggle. And I said, from the first moment that I stepped foot on that ground, that it was in my face. We went back 15 times. And we went back after they told us, and the Emir of Al-Bad told us, if you come back here, we'll execute you. I mean, you cannot come back here. And 2 weeks later, we were right back. And she was just as on fire about it and in their face, because she took her tickets one time and slapped a Bedouin, and we immediately went to jail. So
thank you very much.
The Reagan Cave comes to the rescue. So.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. That Jim right here.
Did you guys find any Bible texts up there, like any books in stone or something up there, or the Ten Commandments or something like that?
You know what? You have a wonderful question. And I can tell you, we were looking with all of our hearts.
In that cave, remember we saw Elijah's cave?
Yeah.
I checked every crevice and every
That's
crack
one
and
thing
pulled on the
we
rocks,
hoped.
hoping to find a secret compartment with the broken tablets of the law. But
We never did find them, though. We sure looked for them, but we never did find
the
them.
writing you talk about, we did see, that's the writing that you see on the rocks, these, what we call the petroglyphs. So that is out there. But as far as finding scrolls, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, or anything
No,
really
unfortunately, we didn't see
amazing
anything like that. But yeah, that was a wonderful question, because we really did. We thought every trip, you have all these wonderful daydreams. Oh, could we find the command, the broken tablets? Oh, what would we do if we did? Oh, should we
The
touch
golden
them?
calf.
You know,
Of course, that
I didn't know what to
Moses rounded
think,
up
but we really did. We really did look and look and look for them, but we never did find them.
The problem was we couldn't relax. They were after us. So we were running all the time. And in some of my excellent video that you saw us doing this, and you're saying, oh my God, would you use a tripod, please? I didn't have time. I mean, my son and I, when we went into these sites, we were moving and creeping very low because the sun would cast a shadow. And if they saw us, and the trip was up, once they saw us, the trip was
They
up.
sent us out of there. But that was a very good question. Thank you.
Like, how many times did you guys, get caught up in there?
Arrested, actually taken away from the mountain 3 times. There were a couple of other times where Bedouin did see us, and in fact, they didn't do anything more than a momentary harassment, like, go away, get out of here. What they would say is, Mafi henna.
In other words, you couldn't be here. Mafi meaning no, and henna here. So
Yeah,
they
they
would say
would, so we would kind of get in our car and drive around a rock and hide over on, this side and wait till they were out of the way and then, kind of circle back around. But
one occasion they came on us, and it was the clouds had moved into the mountain just as we pulled up, and they were shouting at us, and we were just, I was basically trying to ignore them, getting our stuff out of the back of the truck, and a clap of thunder came through the valley. That was so loud, my ear rang.
it seemed like it was right over our heads.
And they got confused, and they took off.
Now it wasn't out of a clear blue sky. I mean, it was in fact cloudy and thundery, but
But it was
it
an
seemed
answer
like
to
it
my
was right
prayer,
over
but I
our
was
head.
praying under my breath.
And also, how many trips did you guys actually make?
15.
15 altogether.
15 altogether over about an 8-year period. Made it back out there 15 times.
Yeah, were these would you camp out there if you could find a spot?
Yeah.
That's
We had
what we do.
a 2-man tent, and 4 people slept in it.
That was a lot of fun, I'm sure.
So imagine 5 days in the desert and 4 people are sleeping in one tent. My kids will never forget. I'm
What
sorry.
was that?
You must have not been a happy camper.
Our kids are not happy campers.
They were really not happy campers.
Will any of your evidence be used in that movie that's coming out?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, they came to us in 2001, and just as the project was getting off the ground, and after they saw much more than what we were able to show in this amount of time.
Well, there actually is
they
more,
wanted-
believe it or not. There's
Yeah, they wanted
quite a
all the
bit
materials.
more that's being uncovered out there. But that is
So,
also
yeah, we'll
going to
be
be in
in
there. Go ahead.
Well, you said you've left since 2002, and Dr. Kim was there. Has anybody been there since now, or are there people there now? And because how guarded it is,
Yeah.
now you're giving presentations throughout. This material's been seen, which thank you. This is great to be able to see this.
Thank you.
Well-
I appreciate that.
But what are they doing now? Are they stepping up, with efforts to keep people out? Or are still people going in there and still looking for, more archaeological finds?
Actually, the first part of the question is we didn't actually know until this past December about Dr. Kim. So it is very possible, as long as there are expatriates in the country, that there are others that are running around, doing the same kind of thing we did that we don't even know about yet. It's highly possible.
Yeah.
What I can tell you, however, is that we know by absolute fact that the site is becoming more and more guarded and more closed. The last time we were there were far more guards stationed. They were not around the corner from the mountain. They were in front of the mountain.
In fact, on satellite images, you can see a big Veteran camp right in
Yeah,
front of the gate. where
They
that
are
car shed
parking
is.
the people now
They're
right in
positioning
front of
them
the mountain.
in front
So
and on the
that,
split rock side.
nobody can do the kind of things that we were doing at the time. Now, it's kind of an ironic thing. It goes kind of both ways with them. Because on the one hand, they would say to the public, they would say if it ever came on the newscast and they were interviewed, which I can't imagine, but if that were ever to happen, they would say, we have done the archaeological by our archaeological department, and we have determined this is not from the time of Moses. It's not possible. And so, we don't care what anybody else says. Our archaeologists have deemed this not from the time of Moses. But as I said, the things that are coming, I can't speak as an expert because I'm not an expert. I can just bring forward the things that we've seen in the Bible and how just beautifully this seems to overlay what we find there in our scripture. But the people who have been looking at this and studying it for the last several years that are going to be coming forth with their ideas, like I said, in this Exodus case that is to come.
You got to remember, they're fighting
It's going to be
tradition.
quite astonishing that these people with their credentials are one of them in fact saying that it's not at all a good thing to do to call that Department of Archaeology, to put it in the same class as the Department of Archaeology you would have in the States or in Israel. So, they don't care. They care by stationing the guards everywhere, but they don't care in that they'll say, we did it. We did it, that's not what it is. So, it's going to be real interesting to see what happens, though.
Your scholars are not prone to thinking out of the box. And this idea breaks the box.
Yeah.
We worried about it all
We
along.
worried about that.
Right.
We
Well,
worried
they've
about
got it
that.
fenced off, and nobody can get in. So the people that are going in are sneaking in. But
Thank you very much. That's what we've been afraid of, and that's
what we have to do.
that's what pushed us all along.
Well, that new area in Israel.
If that's true, if that is true, we're really looking at something that is just astonishing. So,
I try to get the government in. We're a Christian government. They should be able to do something. Give them enough money. They should be able to do some less than policemen that investigate our history.
you're talking about a country that has no problem with money. They have ours. They don't want our money. They already have it.
yeah.
Something's going to happen. We know that something big is going to happen.
We can't hear back here. What are you saying, please?
Is the mic's out?
That might.
Oh, that mic. Okay, here, I'm sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Don.
What do you think would happen if they found out that you did all this video stuff?
If we found out what?
That you did all this video stuff.
Well, sometimes I think about that and I think, oh dear, we might not be in a real good position. What if they come after us? Really? I mean, I've thought about this before. But then you know what else I think? I think, you know what? It has to be the good Lord that's protected us so far, because there's no way that we could have done this on our own. And if He has a good purpose for us, then He'll keep us safe throughout everything we need to do, even if we show this stuff that could get us in a lot of trouble.
The thing is, How come there's more than just one question mark next to Mount Sinai?
Because it's very confusing, so I put a lot of question marks. So that was me. I did that just to make a point, I think. Thanks, Skip.
Thanks for the presentation. I just had one quick question. I've been kind of looking at this myself off and on for about 5 years. That's the conclusion I came up with it. It's definitely no doubt about it in Midian. But how sure are they about the crossing will be in the Gulf of Aqaba? And the reason why I say that is, I might be wrong, but from what I see on the maps, Exodus 15:22, I think, says right after they crossed the Red Sea, they were in the wilderness of Shur, which is actually northwest of the Sinai Peninsula. So, like, how accurate is that mapping?
That's the traditional site.
Yeah, and that's based on the traditional thinking. And actually, Shur goes across the Gulf of Aqaba, and then when they came across, they immediately entered into that area of Shur. It's, I think Glenn was saying this is a signature of a mountain range possible. And so they're right into this mountain range. And then they work their way through these wadis, through Mara, and another location called Elam with the 75. We actually have these on video. It's just so much that we can't put into the presentation.
But
and then they come back out to the Red Sea, and you saw that on that final drawing that I did.
One of the things that this Dr. Glenn Fritz, the PhD geographer, he is an absolute specialist in these old ancient maps and that kind of thing. And he has devoted the last about 4 or 5 years to the study of Yam Suf. And what his research, I'm not sure exactly when his book is going to be finished, but his research as a PhD geographer is also going to astonish people, because he will nail once and for all that the Reed Sea is a complete misnomer. It is not at all even a possibility that it must in fact be the Gulf of Aqaba. And I wish I knew enough, because he's the expert, I wish I knew enough to be able to tell you a little bit about how he came to that conclusion. But it will be coming out. That's part of the information that will be coming out. And that's definitely not something that we're any kind of expert in. But the culmination of this research will show that 99% chance that it had to be the Gulf of Aqaba somewhere, based upon other landforms and the actual name Yam Suf.
Yeah, I know in First Kings, it's, I think it's made reference to Solomon's fleet was in Yam Suf, and that's the only other, I think, biblical.
Right. And kind of, sort of, if you picture a fleet of seagoing vessels that would go out and bring back things big enough to build a temple with, if you picture all those seagoing vessels stuck in a little dry marsh just about called Reed Sea, it kind of doesn't work.
That doesn't work. You know, it's something that's 8 feet deep and it's landlocked. It doesn't make any sense at all.
But it never occurred to me to think that was a possibility until recent years. Like, how could you put a fleet of ships in a marsh?
No, I never thought it was, I never ever would have thought it was that. But I always kind of thought it might have been the Gulf of Suez. So I wasn't sure.
Well, you know, there is a lot of opinion that it could in fact be the Gulf of Suez, but I think by virtue of other landforms that these other guys are working on, that even the borders of Edom are going to be found that they don't end where the traditional Adam means red sands. And if you just go out to Google, follow the red sands, go as far south as they go, and you see the border of Edom, and it's way down into Saudi Arabia. It's way up into the traditional as well. All of that part is right. It's just that the southern borders have always been traditionally drawn so much farther north than they really are, according to what the real meaning of the word is. So,
as we've drawn the scholars down into Arabia to look at this stuff and look further south, it's
by way of our
interesting
film, not
the
by way of
feedback
their entry into the
that
country.
things are starting to come back to us, and they're finding one discovery after another. So we're getting a little clearer picture as all the puzzle pieces kind of come together. Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for a perfectly great presentation. I totally love this kind of stuff. This is great.
Thank you.
I have a real simple question for you. Could you give me the coordinates for the Mount Sinai so we can take a look at Google Maps for ourselves?
Absolutely.
Do we have them with us?
No, we don't have.
I have them on my computer.
If you would.
I was going to email you.
here's what I
Email
recommend.
address, and I'll be happy to.
Go to the website and just send her an email, penny@jimandpenny.com or
And I'll be happy to reply to
And,
it.
we will definitely feed all the ordinance, we have them all, so anything you want. We can bring you right into the Golden Calf altar site, you can see it from satellite.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Did you guys really find the burning bush?
I'm sorry?
Did you guys really find the burning bush?
We have a big bush, kind of like a big tree-looking bush. Doesn't look like a regular tree, but it looks like this just gargantuan bush that we think might be. And the reason we think it might be is simply because this is kind of like a desert area. It's mountainous desert, but it's extremely dry. And this one huge, it's like a cedar tree. It's kind of like a cedar tree. And I mean, it's just this big, gigantic bush. We were telling the people earlier here, it's almost the size of this whole platform and about 30 feet high. And it's right, sort of, I don't know, about how far from Sinai.
Well, the
it's
two
kind of right
peaks
in
are
the
5
valley.
miles and it's right dead center in the, between Sinai and Horeb, and there's nothing else like it in the area. This was the only tree. And then the other 2 trees, you see one to the left and one up the hill a bit, and you can follow the roots from this giant tree, and you can see them come up and sprout into those trees, which are about this size. Interesting that there's 3.
So we think it might be.
And I'm into this, remember the movie The Karate Kid where the old man was working on bonsai? That's my hobby. That's what I like to do is bonsai. And I found out that cedar trees in the area of 6 and 7 inches in diameter can be over 700 to 800 years old. Now that's this big, 800 years old. To think that the olive trees in Israel, which are this big, are 2,000 years old. So we have something that is across the base.
Literally, the
this
trunk
big.
is this wide.
Is it 3,500
So we
years
wonder,
old? We don't
how
know.
old is this
But
thing?
it's the only candidate that we have, but we have seen it. We believe in our heart that it may be.
I don't know how we could scientifically prove it, but we should think it might be the one.
Still growing?
Yes,
It's
it's
still alive.
still growing. And you know what? Just in my own mind, I would think that maybe it would have some kind of little special touch of the Lord that would keep it alive all these years, if that's the real one. Like I said, I can't tell you whether for sure it is or not, but it sure would be in the right place if it is.
God's got it well protected if it is, because you can't get to it.
It's true.
Unless you take a 3-day journey into the mountains, and that's how we found it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good questions.
Okay.
You met up with the, on your first appearance at Mount Sinai, when you came up to the gate, was like, when the kid opened the gate and they came back, were they like shooting at you?
Oh, no. No, you know what? If they would have been, I probably wouldn't be here right now.
But I'll tell you what we did do is when we would get in the vehicle and start driving out of the area, we played the music very loud in case there were bullets flying by, we wouldn't hear them.
But no, as far as we know, nobody ever actually shot at us.
As far as we know,
They
no.
did pull their guns and say, you have to leave here right now.
Did they ever like try to whack you with it? Like,
No, we didn't
Thank
get
God,
whopped.
no.
Thankfully, we didn't get whopped with a gun.
Walked with it.
But they did pull them on us, but they just used that as very strong emphasis to tell us, you need to leave here right now.
and like, was that kid like friendly opening the door?
He was actually pretty friendly. I guess he was maybe 11 or 12, maybe 13 years old.
Like not knowing what he was doing wrong and stuff?
Right.
Exactly.
I
He
really
wouldn't know
don't
what he was
think.
doing.
I felt very sorry for him because I thought, he's just trying to be nice to us. And here, it was just a bad situation, and his dad yelled at him a lot, believe me. But I think he was just trying to be friendly to us. I think he just thought we wanted to go and find a good campsite to spend the night because it was getting dark. But we got out of there pretty quickly when the adults came back.
Also, in jail, were you treated well? Like, were you fed good food or like?
Well, I tell you
Just
what.
left in solitary confinement.
Oh, no. We were, in fact, we were taken away to the jails, but they never actually put us in a cell. What they did was they would bring us to what would be like the chief of police, and we would be sat down in chairs in front of him. Now, they didn't handcuff us or anything like that, but they would sit there, and it was very, very hard to understand them. Most of the time, they would have to get another worker from another country that happened to know Arabic and English to interpret between us, because we couldn't understand what they wanted of us, and they couldn't get through to us what they were trying to ask. We didn't understand them, they didn't understand us. So they would get someone that would speak some kind of English, and they would sit us there for maybe 4 or 5 hours, and we would just sit there and try to understand one another, and in the end, it would always be, okay, go home. Go back to the other side of the country, get out of here.
Look, like, would they try to, like, did they ever take pepper spray on you or something?
Oh, no. No. Thankfully, they did not do that.
Like, was that where, did bombs ever go off in there?
No. We never had anything like that happen. They basically just kind of arrested us, and I think mostly what they wanted to know is, what are you doing here? We don't want you to be here. Go home. So they incarcerated us for a
What kind of
while.
home would be, like, just right across the country?
Yeah, they would send us back to the other side of the country.
Yeah, also, like, would it be like rock climbing going up the mountain?
Well,
Last question. We've got one more, and then we're going to have to stop.
that's a real good question, though. We had, in some places, the mountains were pretty smooth, where you could kind of just make your way up kind of like a hill, because there were surely no pathways. But in other parts of the mountain, the rocks were very, very slick and steep, and we would actually have to go around those rocks, because I don't know how to do that kind of rock climbing, the fancy rock climbing. And we would just have to pick our way around areas that weren't like sheer cliff walls and stuff like that. So,
Right.
thank you.
Yours is an incredible story, and thanks so much for coming up. My question would be, you talked about Bob Cornuke, and I read his book quite a number of years ago, and he speaks on the issue of, or on the topic of the crossing site. He talks about an elevated, to use your word, a landform, as a possible site.
Right.
Have you explored around that area, or are you familiar
Yes,
with?
we have. And in fact, one of the things that you don't see a lot about the Red Sea in our presentation, mainly for one reason, we haven't done nearly as much research as, say, Bob did the diving in the Straits of Tyran, and Dr. Leonard Muller of Sweden took a team and went diving at the Nueva crossing site. Both sites have evidence that is compelling. To be perfectly honest with you, now we have gone scuba diving in the Red Sea. We have not been diving in the Straits of Tyran. However, that large lump of petrified coral with the bronze pieces, you saw me trying to quickly hack it out of the mountain before they crossed. That is at the Straits of Tyran. Now, that is compelling evidence. At the same time, the Nueva site is where all of the formations are being found underwater that really resemble the chariot wheels and the cabs of chariots and that kind of thing. So we kind of go back and forth as to which of these two sites. But one thing that I can tell you is that there is really good evidence that the Gulf of Aqaba is the body of water that was crossed. And what's very interesting about both the Straits of Tyran crossing site and the Red Sea crossing site, the Nueva crossing site, which is kind of in the middle of the Gulf of Aqaba, is that if you route the Israelites either way, from either the Straits of Tyran up to this mountain Jebel Oz, or from Nueva up to the mountain Jebel Oz, it will work either way.
Either side, yeah.
Because you
Either
come to
pathway
the
works.
same kind of stopping
Almost the same Mara, the
stations
same
as you do.
Elam, the same
Either way.
encampment by the Red Sea.
So, which further complicates matters, because then
Right.
we really don't know,
I can say,
which one to look at.
I'll make one comment about it, and all of that, and all of the evidence that we have seen, we were diving strictly on the Saudi side. And there was another person that dove on the Saudi side, and a picture of a wheel that she has, this is a woman, that Leonard Muller had looked at and determined to be a cherry wheel, is, in my mind, no doubt the real thing. And it is a coral encrusted wheel, but it is identical to what you see in the Cairo Museum, and in its shape and form. And there's no doubt. And also, when we were diving, at about 70 feet, I grabbed onto a very similar object, and it had a hub with a few spokes, and we pulled it up to about 30 feet. I had run out of air at about 40 feet, swam up as quick as I could,
So like a good husband
grabbed
who
her
rips my
octopus,
air off
pulled
my
her
back.
back, and started trying to, and her tank went empty, and so we free ascended to the surface, and then, and I had to drop the wheel and my weight belt and everything else. So we
Where's
lost
that
it.
at, by the way?
Where was that?
That was
Where
up on
were
the
you?
Nueva side.
That's the middle of the Gulf of
Middle
Aqua
of the
site.
Gulf of Aqua.
Did you go out on that landform at all?
This is where we were diving.
That's where we were,
Yeah.
that's where we were diving when this
Right.
At the
occurred.
Strait of Turan?
Oh, it's no.
Oh, no.
Okay.
And
No.
the reason
You're
that.
talking about the underwater land bridge.
Yeah.
The reason that we couldn't is because a guard tower is stationed there.
Right.
And that's not because of a potential crossing site. It's because there's four international borders actually that come together there. There's Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Jordan. And it's a
Real tight.
it's a tight area in there, and suspicions are exceedingly high, as you can well imagine. So we if we'd have put tanks on and tried to go down right there, I think they'd have just plucked us out of the water and sent us back home.
Thanks.
So,
You're welcome.
thank you.
Again, thank you for this. This is amazing. Why is the government protecting this so much? Like, why don't they destroy all this evidence?
Well, my immediate response to that would be, I think, that God Almighty is protecting it. That's the first thing I think. On a political kind of level, I think knowing and living amongst the Saudis as long as we have, that they have a tendency to be very superstitious people. And there are many of them that do revere any prophet that is also in the Quran as the Bible. And while they would say, they would call him Moses, he's in the Quran as well as in the Bible. But I think if they have the slightest little bit of superstition that this could be from Prophet Musa, then if they destroy it, they're destroying something that's related in the Quran, and they don't want to do that. At the same time, it's another one of those things that's like this, in our minds.
We do know.
We have a great fear that any day they're going to doze the site.
And right north of where we lived in
So-
Ras Tanura, which was on the Persian Gulf, just below Khafji, where when Saddam invaded Kuwait, he pushed into Saudi Arabia, at a city called Khafji. And between that place and where we lived, there was a place called Christian Ruins. It was a small dirt mud building that was built around the time just after Jesus, and they believed that it was a church that was brought together by Paul. So it became kind of a known thing among the expatriates.
Now, the Saudis never admitted this.
They would not.
This is
Oh,
something
no.
that
This was something other people had done
expatriate
research, and
archaeologists
some of these
assumed this was.
archaeologists had gone in there and done proper excavations. And so this was a kind of an undercurrent that this was the Christian ruin. And so what ended up happening in about 1996 was it started drawing a lot of attention from the expatriate, the Christian community in the area. And they dozed it. And we went out there. We couldn't believe it. We saw it in the newspaper. And they blamed it on the expatriates. And we couldn't. We went out there, and it was flattened bulldozer tracks everywhere. And so they're not
That's
capable
how we were
of doing
afraid.
that.
Oh, good gracious,
Seeing
what if
that
they
kind of
doze this
thing
stuff?
going on.
But so far,
Not yet.
not yet. So hopefully it'll stay that way. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. In the beginning of your presentation, you talked about a light and a whirlwind. Could you elaborate on that some more, please?
At the trip that we found the Split Rock, that attempt, what we were doing there, we were trying to climb over the back of the mountain. And this was before GPS, so I was using a technique called dead reckoning. And we were lost. Didn't ask for directions. Forgot. And so we were lost. We slipped in and found the split rock, it was pretty good. And then we were going up, and we're trying to find an area where we can climb up over the mountain. And this was a whole evening trip. But we got up to a certain elevation, and then all of a sudden she nudged me and said, "Oh my God, what is that?" And we're looking up the mountain, and below the sun had gone down, and below the ridge was a bright light. You saw what I showed is a demonstration on it. That's a simulation of what it looked like. Because I couldn't get my camera up to photograph it or video.
It was not the dark of night.
And it wasn't the dark of night. It was just like you saw it in the picture. And then after that, we were discouraged because the climb was very difficult. And then that was something that drew us up. I said, "Oh, that's got to be a searchlight or something. The Saudis have something up here. So I'm going to go after it and find out what it is." And so then we slept. It was a great night. We got up the next morning, packed our tent, and started back up. And when we got to the area, of course, there was nothing. Just rock, stone, nothing. And so as we got up to the top of the ridge, well, we're here, we're going to continue trying to make our goal. And we went up maybe another 500 feet or so across a very narrow ridge and got to a place where we could lay down. And once we sat down, and she had just moments before thought, "Oh my God, what happens if we're up here near an earthquake?"
This is why I tell you about a mountain climber. Number one, I hate heights.
And the moment we hit the ground,
like that.
things just went back and forth. Now, I've only been in one other earthquake that was more severe than this, but it shot us up and we were terrified. It quit. Almost as fast as it began, it quit. And then a little while later, we continued our climb up. And what happened is our goal was to climb over the top of Sinai and get down into the covenant site where you see all of these things. I didn't have the video yet. And so when we got up there, we realized we saw the mountain. You could tell by the black peak. We were 5 miles away. We had missed it. And there was no way on this trip that we were going to be able to make it. And she sat down really discouraged, and I went up the hill, and I could hear a whirring sound. The sound was like a woo, woo, woo. In my experience in industry, that sound was coming from what sounded like to be a large cooling tower fan, one of these big things that you see at power plants. And that's where I used to work. I said, "Oh," and the resonance started shaking the ground. And I came up the ridge, and I'm looking, there's flat land or flat rock like this, and I could see a kind of a raised area, and I'm walking towards it, and it got louder and louder, and I turned around and started screaming for Penny to get up here. "Come up here, you won't believe this." And as I was looking ahead, I realized that within a couple feet of where I was standing was I looked like heat waves. And I'm looking through it, and I can see Sinai. And in my mind, just for a second, I thought, if I put my hand out, this would transport me to the mountain where I wanted to go. And as I did that, I thought also, her face came into my mind as coming up over the ridge, and I'm not there. And fear wiped through me. And I turned around again, and I started screaming, "Get out here, you're missing this." And I turned back around, and this thing moved enough to pull up bushes and dirt and rocks and filled up, and it was a giant whirlwind. So that's when I say that. And what happened there is it just moved a few feet and then went off the mountain. It's gone. And everything disappeared. It was just that fast.
I don't know how to explain it. It was natural things
More
that
what
happened,
kept us going back time and
so,
time and time again.
So unexplainable as to why in this sequence and why, I don't know how to explain those things. We try to keep them out of the PowerPoint presentation because, we're trying to just stay on facts.
I don't want people running out of
that's a personal testimonial kind of thing that we can tell you. And I think a lot of times the Lord just showed us things like that to keep us encouraged enough and our interest enough, to keep chancing it.
Well, that moment changed our life too. That was even something that caused us to go back with more determination.
Yeah. So.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. God bless. Have a great night tonight.
Does the address ring a bell to you? Does the address ring a bell to you? Anybody taking care of them? Okay, just wondering. Just wondering.
Can I have your autograph? It's going to cost. You did a fine job. You stood that whole time.
His stuff.
He cheated.
They did.
Can I get you anything?
They did.
He was sleeping back here. You didn't
Can I get you anything? Sure.
Thank you.
Whatever you want. How about a milkshake? Harvey's milkshake, large?
That's all right. I do it for, I guess I do. No, I know I do.
Yahweh is Lord.